Hey everybody, the Steam Deck development live stream happened yesterday. I'm sitting down today to watch it and basically react to anything that is interesting that happens throughout the video. So, if that sounds good to you, make sure that you click on the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and click on the like button for the algorithm. And if there's something that jumps out to you while you're watching this, make sure that you leave a comment down below. I'm sure that we will talk about it on the next episode of On Deck.
Please do so.
Oh, hang on. Let's take
However,
a look
even with
at
this
the
regulated way
stuff in the
with deck,
background here. He's got some like prototype drawings, it looks like. And if you look at that, it almost seems like they had envisioned in the past the idea of Nintendo Switch cell controllers where you can take them off the side. Now, personally, I'm glad that they didn't do that. I can there's a benefit and a negative to that. The negative being, over time my Switch feels a little wobbly where the controllers connect. It's not quite as sturdy as it once was. And that's just something that happens wear and tear over time, and less places where there are new things connecting to each other, that's less places where things can break. Um the reason why that's also a good thing is because it means that they don't have to squeeze everything behind the screen. They have a lot more room on the sides to put more stuff. The reason why that would have been really good, and it shows that they're probably been thinking about this, is the idea that when I dock this thing, I can then take the controllers off and then I can still use all of the input methods that I would normally have. Clearly, they're thinking about that, which makes me think that maybe we will see a Steam controller 2 at some point. Um, but they decided against that for whatever reason.
and the answer to that is no. It's just a regular retail prototype unit, and there's no extra bits to it. So a lot of the testing you'll want to do for Steam Deck, you can actually do with hardware you have available. So let's go by the main pillars of the Deck Verified
All right,
model.
let's take a second there. Um, in a previous episode of On Deck, Lloyd and I were talking about how the guy Durante, who brings a lot of Japanese games that are made for console and ports them to Steam, he has his own dev kit, and he complained that the B button was kind of sticking for him sometimes. And both Durante and Lloyd and I, we all speculated that that was because he had a non-final version. Now, does this mean that he doesn't have a non-final version? Does what he just said is that there's nothing special about the dev kits? It's simply a Steam Deck that they've sent out. So do we have to worry about that B button issue? Very interesting.
So if you really want to find a PC for testing that is similar in specs to a Steam Deck from a performance standpoint, they exist. We went and found one on Amazon, and after a lot of argument, our engineers and folks on the team found that this mini PC is pretty close.
All right, before we go any further, he said something very interesting there. After a lot of argument, there's going to be people who hear whatever the specs are of this PC, and I have no idea because I'm watching this for the first time. Um, people are going to talk about the specs of this PC and say, well, that's not powerful enough to do this. This isn't powerful enough to do that. Keep in mind that Lawrence Yang just said, after lots of argument, we agreed that this was the best example. Simple translations between a CPU, GPU, and an APU that the Steam Deck has is going to be difficult, and that's why they had lots of arguments.
It runs an AMD Ryzen 7 3750H. It has Radeon RX Vega 10 graphics, and it has 16 gigs of RAM.
All right, before we go any further, I have a question. I'm not a hardware guy. When I upgrade my PC, the most important thing was that my graphics card could had a chip on it that would encode video very, very quickly because I'm a content creator first, and most of my gaming is done on consoles. So let me know in the comment section down below what that system is going to be like.
So the team agreed that while the GPU is a little weaker and the CPU is a little stronger, it's pretty comparable to the specs of a Steam Deck, especially when running at 1280 by 800. So putting it all together, if you put Linux on this box, and if you hook up a little monitor and plug in a controller, now you have basically a little hacking deck. And this is one way to try and test out your title with everything together.
Wonder how did he say how much that
display,
costs?
Proton, and performance. Again, you don't have to do all of this to test. You can do it just as well with the hardware you have available, and you don't have to go out and buy new stuff.
DevKit EV2 hardware, has been reported to have a few issues. Is that being addressed in the retail release of Steam Deck?
Yep, that is the whole point of the EV2 hardware. It's an engineering verification test of where we try building some and we see what issues it has, and then we fix it in the next build. So short answer is yes, those issues have been noted and fixed.
I'm guessing that's the one that Durante has.
If a game is verified on deck, will the visibility be increased
That's a good name for a podcast.
on Steam? Will you get more visibility?
Yes, but only on Steam Deck. You'll get a different view of Steam when you're looking at the store from a Steam Deck.
But what's truly novel about our processor is that it was designed from the ground up to be optimized for the 4 to 15 watt power envelope available to us in this form factor. AMD is here with us today, and they'll...
So I've seen a lot of people talk about, the fact that its maximum output for wattage is 15 watts. And that's going to limit how it's going to limit how much the power it can really push. That's not the right word. It's going to limit how much fidelity that the games can really push. Again, this goes back to the idea that we don't know how this hardware is going to work because it isn't just like every other hardware out there. It is very custom stuff.
dive a little bit deeper into the details of this APU. But the one major takeaway that I'd like to leave you with today is that the level of performance per watt we were able to achieve with this processor would simply not have been possible using any off-the-shelf processor that exists today.
That's exactly what I was just trying to say. He said it so much better than me. The power per watt. Everybody's is comparing it to known stuff. This is not like that off-the-shelf stuff. Very interesting.
Now, despite our best efforts, Steam Deck does have to be charged every once in a while. And for that reason, we have a Type-C port capable of 45 watts. That should be enough power to both run the device at max load and simultaneously charge at a full rate.
That's really good. I'm very happy to hear that. I cannot tell you the number of times where I've been trying to do something with an electronic device that needs to be charged, and it runs out because it charges slower than it charges slower than the usage happens, so it ends up dying. So it's very, very good that they're going with 45 watts, because that means that when it's plugged in and you're using it at the same time, the percentage number will go up instead of down.
We have a dedicated amp and DSP that monitor their adoptions.
Hang on, I gotta rewind that.
Built-in speakers has a slightly different audio.
Look at that thing in the background. What is that thing? That's weird looking. That's got to be an old prototype. Very interesting.
When it comes to load times, the SD card reader loads the game about 18% slower compared to the NVMe 512 GB SSD. Similarly, when it comes to boot times, the 64 GB eMMC boots 25% slower compared to the built-in NVMe SSD. All
right, so this is something that I would tell one of my students, this is not okay. First off, you don't always have to have 0 on a graph, okay? But secondly, they have, I don't want to say that they're intentionally trying to manipulate the data. He just said it's an 18% difference in game load time, yet these 3 bars look all the same level. And that, I don't know, feels a little manipulative, but I don't know if it's intentional or not.
And are there any plans to add 5G or LTE?
At this point in time, unfortunately, we don't plan that or haven't really considered it. However, you can always tether to your phone if you're out of Wi-Fi coverage.
I wouldn't want 5G or LTE on there. Those things are a huge battery suck, and it would be nice if you could, get a plan for your Steam Deck to always be connected to the internet. But he's right. Just tethering it to your phone is probably a much better option, in my opinion.
Are we planning any hardware improvements by any chance?
Really, we're focusing right now on making sure the current Steam Deck Gen ships and is the optimal experience that it can be. So we don't have anything to share right now,
Yes, they are.
but definitely looking at a multi-generational product here. So
I feel like I'm like peppering with questions. Tell me the answer.
Players can even find your game in the store directly by searching for it with the new universal search. Search combines results from your users, library, friends, and the store. So even if a user doesn't own your game, they can find it just by going to the top of the screen and using the universal search.
I really, really hope that there is a way to filter the results of this universal search thing, because if I am looking to play, I don't know, like let's say Final Fantasy X on my Steam Deck, I don't want Final Fantasy, like I just want to look in my library and find Final Fantasy X. If I type in Final and then I find Final Fight, which I don't have, Final Fantasy 1, which I don't have, and like all of this myriad of other things that have Final in them, that'll be kind of a frustrating experience. Now, I'm assuming that this thing right up here is the filter button so that I can click on that or tap on that in like on the touch screen and say, just show me my library. Fingers crossed.
One example that I know I'm excited about is the updated Steam Input Configurator.
Ooh.
Our updated design system includes features that are designed to be accessible whether using a keyboard and mouse, a controller, or the touchscreen. The new UI is easier for both customers and developers to use, and we're completely rethinking how we present information so that it'll look a lot more like what your customers are used to seeing in a game. You can see that the experience is going to be consistent whether you're on the desktop client or on the Steam Deck.
That's awesome.
And there's a fresh new set of controller glyphs that cover the most popular controllers on Steam. That includes glyphs for the Steam Deck. Those glyphs have been designed to make it easier for you to change the appearance in the game so you can really make the content feel seamless. And if you hook up our API, you'll know that your customers will always get a great experience no matter what they're playing with.
Well, if your game depots are full of high-resolution textures, audio, or movies, you may want to consider configuring depots with lower resolution versions specific to the Steam Deck. You'd upload that content.
This is exactly what we talked about on episode 8 of On Deck. There was a user who had written in. They said, I hope that they have smaller footprints for games that you're playing on Steam Deck. This is awesome. I really, really hope that they also allow you as the end user to decide to download the extra stuff so that when you dock your Steam Deck, you're not looking at, super low resolution assets. Now, of course, if you do that, you're going to see a performance hit, but some games that might not really matter.
I'm Pierre-Loup, and for this section, I'll share some details on Proton, which is used to make Steam Deck compatible with Windows.
Oh, look at the white one in the background. Was there a little pan at the beginning of that?
Hello.
Yeah, look at the white one in the background. That one looks awesome. Although I don't think I like the white trackpads. That's weird looking. But I really like the white one.
For example, a built-in browser engine like the Chromium Embedded Framework is less likely to have issues than MS-HTML. In general, we don't recommend launcher windows, but if you have...
So they just said Chromium is built in. So that means as long as GeForce Now turns it on, you'll be able to play GeForce Now games on this. Stadia obviously works in all Chromium stuff. So that's going to work just fine. Xbox, I assume that works in all Chromium stuff, but Xbox cloud gaming, I mean. I assume that stuff all works in Chromium. And plus, we've seen Phil Spencer talk about his experience playing games like Age of Empires on the Steam Deck, as well as I think he talked about some other Xbox games. So I love that that's Chromium and not like some built-in proprietary thing.
Whether Steam is working closely with leading game engine developers Epic Games and Unity about Steam Deck?
Definitely, yeah. We're always working with both Unity and Epic on making sure Unreal and Unity engine have the integration that was going to make the dev experience working on these engines to target their games on deck as smooth as possible. And I think there's always going to be improvements rolling into the engines to integrate things with our dev tools and make it a great target for deck. But already we're seeing a pretty good experience.
That's super, super important. These are incredibly popular engines that a lot of developers use, and tons of games using those engines already exist, which means it's going to be easier for those devs to bring their games to Steam Deck. Not that they have to, I mean, according to Valve, they're not really going to have to jump through that many hoops, but this just kind of clarifies that.
From the get-go right now.
Awesome. Next question is, can we use more than 1 gigabyte of GPU memory for textures, Vertex, and other buffers, or is that a hard limit?
No, actually, more than 1 gigabyte is definitely available to use with the GPU. Up to 8 gigabytes can be shared right now, and it's a limit we can actually change on a game-by-game basis.
Okay, lots of questions coming in about Proton. And
Okay, so that's different than what they said earlier. Earlier, they said it was a maximum of 8. But on a game-by-game basis, they can change how much is available. So the devs themselves will be able to get that sweet spot in order to tune their games for Steam Deck. That's really good information.
Now, Xinput provides an excellent stable base for gamepad support on PC, but an unfortunate downside is that many games don't recognize the variety of hardware available. This means that even with outside translation into Xinput, on-screen button icons don't match, and their controls are limited to a subset of what that controller may offer.
That is one of the most annoying things about trying to use, like, say, my 8-bit DOE controller where the A and the B are switched, or if I'm using a PlayStation controller where it doesn't have the weird things for like the X, the square, the circle, and the triangle. I love it when games use Steam Input, because then they detect what controller you're using and give you the proper icons on screen.
So I'm going to quickly jump into the configuration for this game, and I'll set the right trackpad to be a mouse. I'll set the gyro to be a mouse as well, because as we mentioned earlier, this sort of gyro control offers fast and precise one-to-one input. This is of course just one quick example of how you might expand your existing controls to work on the Steam Deck, but we hope it gives you an idea of how you can potentially make the most of the available controls.
If nothing else comes from the Steam Deck, I hope that it's widely I hope that it hits really, really well, just so that people will have the opportunity to try those trackpads for like first person shooters and games like that, and then other game systems start bringing in trackpads, because the trackpads are just absolutely amazing.
We're investigating other ways to best support touchscreens, and we'd like your feedback on what would be most useful to you.
Here's what I think as an end user would be amazing is right now with a Steam controller, I can put my thumb on one of the pads and have a menu pop up. If you could do that with a touch screen, you could have so many more inputs available to you. And if I just wanted to open up a map, I could just tap the screen, move my finger over to the map glyph, and have it open up a map instead of pressing the M button. I think that would be fantastic, and I would really, really like to see them do that.
The PlayStation controllers offer the sort of closest set of controls in that they have a built-in gyro and they have trackpad, so you can start getting a feel for those sorts of things. Of course, they won't have a touch screen, and they don't have the back buttons. And
all right, so I've been thinking a lot about the idea of whether or not we would get a sequel to the Steam controller, and they keep talking about the idea that the PlayStation controllers are very similar to a Steam controller, meaning that they have gyro and they have a touchpad. I wonder if that is the Steam Controller 2 solution, where Valve ships a controller that is like a PlayStation controller that has that touchpad in the middle. I hope that's not the solution, because you can't really use that for for camera control. It just wouldn't be comfortable. But it's definitely a possibility for them.
And will we support touch menus on the Deck touchscreen?
So we already support sort of virtual menus like radial menus and touch menus via Steam Input in general, via the trackpads or joysticks. We're looking at ways that we can support it with the touchscreen, and we currently have similar things there for touchscreen via like streaming on phones and tablets. But we haven't solidified any real plans there yet.
Oh, okay, come on.
Great. Scott, thank you so much.
Would you ever want a developer to make a game that only works on Steam Deck?
No.
And the answer to that is no. That doesn't really make much sense to us. It's a PC, and we just think that it should just play games like a PC does.
Yep.
How do we decide who gets a dev kit? Like I said, they are really constrained and limited in number. We have less dev kits than we have developers. So the way we're actually figuring things out for that approval queue is by looking at not only community interest in that title of that developer, but also what are the top games being played by people who have reserved the Steam Deck. And we prioritize those for dev kits.
That's really interesting. So they look at like Bill, and they say, well, Bill pre-ordered a Steam Deck and he really likes to play, let's say, New World. So New World, you know, if there's a lot of people like me, then they would fast track the idea that that particular studio would get a Steam Deck dev kit. That's interesting.
At the top level, you'll see an icon, and customers will see an icon for which one of the 4 categories it falls into. You'll be able to go into detail and see like which items within each category it passes, fails, or is playable on. And for developers on the partner side, we're actually building the tool right now where you get the results of your.
I really hope that we as the users can also see why something is marked as playable and not verified. Like that's a really important thing because I want to know what's the reason this has a yellow icon and not the green icon.
Will the rating that Valve applies to any given game appear in the store context if you're not looking at the store from a deck itself?
Yes.
And the answer is if you are someone who owns a deck and you go to the desktop version of the store, you will see an extra little row on the game detail page. And you also see it in the search if you search for different deck verified statuses. And that search aspect is also available for everyone, even if you don't own a deck. So the high level answer is usually no.
I think that's a mistake, honestly, because if I am somebody who is just considering getting a Steam Deck and I am scrolling through the store and I see verified, 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 verified over and over and over, that's a really good thing, indicator to me that, hey, I'm going to have a pretty good experience if I pick up the Steam Deck. Hiding that from people who aren't specifically searching for Steam Deck or from people who don't already have one, I think that's a mistake. And I hope that they change that. Not for me, because I don't really care, but for a lot of people, a lot of other people out there who are thinking about it, but maybe not actively searching for it.
We think that it's definitely important when you're on deck to see it in the store. When you're not on a deck and looking in the store, we think it might be somewhat useful if you do own a deck, but otherwise we make it available, but we don't put it in your face.
So there you have it. Is there anything that I didn't focus on that you found super interesting if you watched the whole thing? Let me know in the comments section down below. And of course, if you want to get more thoughts on what's going on with the Steam Deck, make sure that you check out our podcast On Deck. Episode 9 will be coming up soon, and it'll be myself and my co-host Lloyd, and we're going to sit down and talk all about, I'm sure, this as well as any other Steam Deck news that comes up between now and then. Thank you very much for watching. Stay rad, everybody.